You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
In the late 1980s, a high school basketball prospect was making waves in recruiting circles. He was a 6-foot combo guard playing for H. Grady Spruce High School in Dallas, Texas, and chose to play collegiate ball at Arizona State, deciding to become a Sun Devil. His name was Headache Smith, and he was beginning to attract national attention. Arizona State is not well known for their basketball program, to say the least. By that point, they had basically toiled away in mediocrity for most of the program's history. By the time Headache arrived on campus in 1990, the Sun Devils had not won an NCAA tournament game in 10 seasons, with their last victory coming against Loyola Marymount in the 1980 NCAA tournament. But things were looking up during the 1990-91 season, as Headache was an integral part of helping the team achieve a 20-10 record and win their first NCAA tournament game in 10 seasons against Rutgers. Although they would get eliminated in the second round versus the number 1 seeded Arkansas Razorbacks, it showed that not only did ASU have potential, so did Headache. By the time the fall of 1993 rolled around, Headache had established himself as the best player on Arizona State's squad, and one of the best in the nation too. He was expected to be a lottery pick in the 1994 NBA draft, and things looked great for him. He was even named ASU Male Athlete of the Year that season, beating out Phil Mickelson and Jake Plummer. However, an argument with a friend from school would turn his world upside down. The nature of the argument was an upcoming football game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Phoenix Cardinals. Headache, being from Dallas, believed in his heavily favored Cowboys, while his friend wanted to see the local boys win. The debate eventually reached a point where Headache's friend told him that if he was so confident, he should put his money where his mouth is, literally. So Headache's friend called one of his other friends, fellow ASU student and campus bookmaker Benny Silman, and bet $100 on the Cowboys on behalf of Headache. A bookmaker, in simple terms, is a person who accepts bets, except you have to have a license to operate legally as a bookie, and Silman did not. Of course, $100 wouldn't set off any alarms, and so the deal was done. Headache bet on his Cowboys to cover the spread. The spread is simply the amount of points the bookmaker believes one team will win by. It is represented with a minus sign in front of the number. If the favored team loses or wins by less than what the bookmaker predicts, the person who bet for that team to, quote, cover the spread will lose that particular bet. And unfortunately, that was indeed the case for Headache, as the Cowboys failed to cover the spread, and just like that, Headache owed Silman $100. Now, one thing you never want to do in gambling is to chase losses, but unfortunately, Headache did just that, and before long, he owed a whopping $10,000 to Benny Silman, and Silman intended to get his money. But Benny Silman had an idea to make the two of them even, and not only that, make Headache some extra cash as well. He explained that he would bet on games that Headache's team, Arizona State, was heavily favored in, betting against the spread. Headache's job would be to make sure that Arizona State did not cover the spread. And for this, Silman said, he would give Headache $20,000 for every game he was able to successfully alter the outcome in. Now, this is extremely illegal, and what is known in gambling circles as point shaving. So Silman called his buddy Joe Gagliano, and the two got to work looking at Arizona State's schedule, deciding what games they would implement their plan in. ASU's basketball team was pretty good that season and were poised to make another NCAA tournament appearance, their first since Headache's freshman season, and so the two crooked gamblers had a lot to choose from. They settled for the upcoming game between Arizona State and Oregon State, which was set to take place on January 28, 1994. ASU was favored by 15 points in that game, so basically the Sun Devils had to either lose or win by less than 15. Gagliano gave Headache a call before the game started, reminding him that he could either win or lose, but could not win by 15 or more. And then Gagliano traveled to Las Vegas with $500,000, intending to bet it all on the game. The money belonged to Gagliano, Silman, and several others. But here's the thing. A $500,000 bet attracts quite a bit of attention, but Gagliano knew this already, and so he recruited a gang of people to each bet $9,900 at various unconnected sportsbooks across Las Vegas. There were two main reasons for this. Number one, bets of $10,000 or more require the person placing the bet to fill out what's called a currency transaction report, which is a giant red flag to the IRS to start poking around. The second reason is that when too much money is bet on one side of the line, a sportsbook will adjust the line to even things out. And when too many adjustments are made in a short period of time, the sportsbook will take notice and start investigating, and may even alert the gaming board, which in turn may alert the authorities. So by betting through dozens of unconnected sportsbooks, it is unlikely that any one sportsbook would smell a rat and report it. Joe Gagliano recruited dozens of people to help facilitate the bets, including his father. Joe sat back and waited, unable to watch, due to the fact that the game was not being shown on TV. But the score occasionally flashed on the ticker at the bottom of the screen, and Joe was not pleased with what he saw. Headache was having the game of his life, smashing threes and playing airtight defense. Before long, ASU led Oregon State by 15 points, which was a very bad sign. But Headache knew what he was doing. He put the brakes on by dribbling slowly, dragging out possessions, and making defensive mistakes that allowed Oregon State to score. Sometimes he even committed turnovers on purpose. The final score ended with ASU defeating Oregon State by a score of 88-82, a 6-point margin of victory, well under the 15 that they were favored by. Headache, Silman, Gagliano, and Associates all won big. Silman met Headache after the game, handing him a shoebox stuffed with $100 bills. He tells Headache that his debt is paid, but if he would like to earn more money, he can keep fixing games. Headache smiled and agreed. Headache himself that night had a career-high 39 points and he played great. From the outset, no one could have suspected he was fixing games. I mean, he was absolutely crushing it. And so, Headache decided he could fly under the radar and keep fixing games, and to make that easier, he roped in his best friend on the team, Isaac Burton. 2 days later, the Sun Devils faced Oregon in Eugene, and Gagliano bet the entire $1.1 million he made on the first fix on this game. The game luckily took place just mere days before the Super Bowl. The reason that was lucky is because that's the one time of year where Vegas goes absolutely nuts, with people traveling from near and far to bet on the game. And so $1.1 million would fly under the radar as long as Gagliano split it up between different sportsbooks as he had previously done. Arizona State was favored in that game by 12.5, and so long as Headache and company won by 12 or less, or they lost, then everybody would walk away winners. But here's the issue. Headache's teammates were absolutely locked in. Headache and Burton, the only two in on the fix, attempted to slow things down as best they could, but before they knew it, the Sun Devils led the Ducks by 18 points. Headache bricked shots when he could, which helped, but soon went down with an ankle injury and was taken out of the game. But Headache knew what was at stake. He begged the coaches to be put back in. He hobbled onto the court and resumed playing, and somehow, maybe through sheer luck, Oregon started to make a rally, but fell just short of coming back completely, and the game ended with an 84-78 victory for ASU, another 6-point victory, well under the 12.5 margin. Again, everybody won, and Headache was paid $20,000. Now here's the thing, Lady Luck is a fickle bitch, and sooner or later she's going to turn away from you, and that's exactly what happened to Headache Smith and Isaac Burton. You see, Headache and Isaac were on a spending spree, buying expensive items and cars. Whether or not they intended for word to get out about them fixing games, it eventually did, and soon the whole ASU student body knew, and they all began driving the 400 miles northward to Sin City to bet on ASU games. One particular game, which was expected to draw about $50,000 worth of bets, drew more than $1 million. And bookmakers across the city noticed that suddenly, tons of college kids in ASU shirts and hats were showing up betting against their own team. There was such a crazy influx of bets that the line for one particular game changed 42 times in one day. It didn't take long before the FBI was alerted and an investigation was launched. Back in Tempe, Arizona, Headache and Isaac were blissfully unaware. Upcoming on the schedule was a game against UCLA, a game that ASU was not favored in. And Headache, out of what was likely pure greed, decided he wanted to fix this game too. Gagliano and Silman agreed, but if he failed to fix the game, he would owe them all the money he had made so far, so that Gagliano and Silman could cover their losses. The line was 4, and the favorite in the contest was the UCLA Bruins. Arizona State either needed to win or lose by less than 4. With just a few minutes left in the game, it was tied 70-70, but UCLA went on a run of 6-0. Suddenly, Headache and Isaac found themselves down by 6. They needed 3 points and fast. There was just seconds left on the clock. The game was over. There's no way for Arizona State to win this game. But no one else knows what Headache and Isaac know. So the fans were confused when Headache grabbed the ball and furiously stormed up the court, acting like his entire life depended on it. Right before the buzzer, Headache launched a three, which hit the front of the rim. Headache looked as if his entire world just collapsed in on him. Headache lost all his money at once. He had to give it all back to Silman in order for them to cover their losses. But Headache wasn't satisfied with going back to zero. He decided to fix the upcoming game between ASU and Washington, and then he would stop fixing games and just play normal basketball for the rest of the year. Meanwhile, in Las Vegas, droves of ASU students continue to show up to bet on games. There are so many bets being placed that the line went from 11 to 6, which is a dramatic shift. The FBI was watching, waiting. They were interviewing students. All the while, Headache and Isaac don't have a clue. Silman soon roped in a shady character going by the street name Big Red, a mountain of a man who sold drugs and was involved in organized crime. And so, Silman told Headache that for the final fix he would get $40,000. It would be the very last fix. But the margin of error was very small in this particular game. The line was only 3 by that point, so if Headache wanted to still win the game, he could only win by 1 or 2 points. Or he could lose. But Headache was a competitor. He wanted to win, but also fix the game. Have his cake and eat it too, so to speak. And so that's what he planned to do. But Lady Luck turned on Headache and Isaac once again, and the Sun Devils went on to win by 18 points. Headache was met at his apartment by a gang of tough guys wanting their money. He owed them a total of $100,000. He begged and pleaded with them to give him more time. It eventually ended with Headache promising to cut them a check as soon as he signed his first NBA contract. The gang of tough guys left, and Headache resumed playing normal basketball. ASU missed the NCAA tournament that season and lost to BYU in the first round of the NIT. And during the 1994 offseason, Headache impressed scouts at the NBA pre-draft workout in Chicago.
Good evening, and welcome to the 1994 NBA Draft at the Hoosier Dome here in Indianapolis.
On June 29, 1994, Headache and his family gathered for a draft party in Dallas, Texas. Food was served. Friendly chatter filled the home. The 1994 NBA Draft started, and Headache was expected to be a lottery pick. The Milwaukee Bucks held the number 1 pick, and the Dallas Mavericks held the 2nd pick. The Bucks selected Glenn Robinson, a forward from Purdue. But this was good. Maybe the Mavericks would select Headache, right?
With the 2nd pick in the 1994 NBA Draft, the Dallas Mavericks select Jason Kidd from the University of California.
Jason Kidd, he played high school ball at St. Joseph's of Notre Dame in Alameda, California. He's 21 years old.
Wrong. They selected Jason Kidd, who, fun fact, is currently the Mavericks head coach in 2025. Pick by pick, Headache waited nervously, and by the time the draft ended, Headache had not been chosen. He angrily stormed out of the house, got into his car, and drove into the warm Dallas night. Though he feigned confusion, deep down, he knew that somehow, someway, the NBA knew. They knew what he had done. He eventually got signed by a team in Spain and then got a chance to play with a team in the Continental Basketball Association, which at the time was the NBA's AAA minor league. Think of it as the predecessor to today's G League. The team was the Grand Rapids Hoops, whom he played for during the 1994 through 95 season. Later on in 1995, he played for a team in the Philippines, then back stateside with the Grand Rapids club once again. But no matter where he went or what country he played in, he couldn't relax. He was expecting the FBI to raid his place at any time. He was filled with constant anxiety. Headache later said, quote, "I knew what I'd done wasn't just going to disappear. I had nightmares, daydreams. I thought about it all the time." Unquote. In 1997, Michael Jordan was defeating my Utah Jazz in the NBA Finals. Sad. But Headache, meanwhile, was playing pretty well for himself. He spent that particular season with the Sioux Falls Skyforce, a CBA team located in South Dakota. He had such a good season, his hometown Mavericks took notice and signed him to a 10-day contract. The previous season, the Mavericks had traded Jason Kidd away and were looking for a talented guard. Headache said, quote, "I couldn't believe it. Just my per diem was as much as I made in the CBA in 1 week." unquote. He played in a total of 8 games through 2 10-day contracts. In those 8 games, he had a total of 14 points. He was cut 3 weeks later, and soon after, in 1997, the knock he'd been dreading finally came. The FBI came looking for him. Everyone had rolled over. They ratted on him. It was over. Silman got 8 years, but Headache, thanks to a plea deal, got a year and a day. He served his time at Big Spring Correctional Center in Texas. After getting out of prison, no NBA team would touch him, and Headache went overseas once again, playing for teams in Israel, Russia, Greece, and Italy. Today, he runs an organization dedicated to educating youth in Dallas about staying out of trouble and trying to keep them on a good path. The organization is called No Opportunity Wasted, or NOW for short. Headache said, quote, "I'm not blaming anyone but myself, but I'm trying to be the mentor and father figure that I never had," unquote. These days, Headache coaches basketball and runs his youth organization, which shows that redemption is possible. You may think it's too late or that you're irredeemable, but you deserve love and you can be forgiven and you can change. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you hated it, leave a dislike. But either way, comment and subscribe for the algorithm. Peace out.
Never ever find the right words, and there's no way this is real life. There's no telling you're the right girl, so I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right.